shares. Cuban, though, says he's innocent and a victim of gross government abuse of power. Does the government have a case against Cuban? Well, joining us now is Michael Clark, a white-collar lawyer from Houston. But first, let us hear from Cuban's own attorney himself, Christopher Clark. He joins us on the telephone now. Mr. Clark, thank you very much for joining us for Happy Hour. This is a big story that broke later in the day. Your client, Mark Cuban, saying he's innocent. I read the complaint from the SEC, the civil complaint, we should point out, and it looks like they have a pretty darn good case. I mean, they lay it out very clearly and concisely. How do you defend against it?
Well, I mean, first of all, if you've read a number of SEC complaints, this is about the shortest, thinnest, and with the least amount of evidence I've ever seen in my years of practice. So I don't agree with your assessment that they have a pretty good case. They claim that one guy, the CEO of Mama.com, had a telephone conversation that there's no record of with Mark Cuban. They leave out the fact that when this CEO told the SEC that he was under investigation by the SEC for all kinds of various fraud, an investigation that the SEC shortly thereafter closed. So, first of all, the conversation as related in the complaint didn't happen in the manner it happened in the complaint. We'll prove that. It's very simple to prove and very straightforward. And secondly, there's a lot about this case, about the SEC's investigation of this case, and the facts of this case that the SEC hasn't told you that we're going to bring out in court. That's why we get a defense.
Mr. Clark, assuming I read what I read and that's accurate, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Mark Cuban actually sold his stake in the company either hours or days prior to the public learning of a stock offering by the company, thereby pushing the stock price lower. So the number that people were throwing around, again, this is a number on the street, $750,000 he saved by not doing that. We know Martha Stewart was indicted or was under investigation for $62,000. So, sir, is that inaccurate?
I mean, first of all, yeah, it's inaccurate because Martha Stewart wasn't charged with insider trading.
Right, I understand.
She was charged with lying about her actions, which no one has ever said Mr. Cuban did. Secondly, if anybody thinks $750,000 is material to Mark Cuban, I'd like to talk to him.
Let me just stop you. I want you to address the issue of him selling his stock prior to the public being made aware of a public stock offering, either hours or days after his sales.
Did Mark Cuban sell Mama.com stock? Absolutely, yes, he did. And there's no rule, regulation, or law whatsoever against him doing that.
You know, Mike, let me throw it over to Michael Clark, the other guy here, and then open it up for you a little bit. Can you explain a little bit then, objectively a little bit, then what it is that they're actually going after here? $700,000 on a guy who's got $2.3 billion, not that big a deal, but again, if it broke a law, he broke a law. Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Well, you know, by analogy, and I know Martha Stewart wasn't charged with insider trading, but in that case, the same issue came up with how much money was involved in the stock that she dumped ahead of time. So the argument about materiality, it's not a percentage argument, it's a qualitative issue as far as insiders that have knowledge the public doesn't have shouldn't be allowed to take advantage of it. The charge here, from what I can tell, and I don't know the facts, I'm looking in as everybody else on the outside is looking in, is whether or not the SEC can establish that prior to instructing the broker to get rid of the stock, Mr. Cuban knew of material, non-public information and took advantage of it.
You know,
that's relatively straightforward.
I don't think that's the issue. The issue is whether Mr. Cuban was an insider, and he wasn't.
No, he can be a situational insider by being given knowledge of the information. You don't have to be
That's not the law, Michael. That's not the law.
Christopher Clark,
I beg to differ.
I guess what I'm looking at is you've got quotes in the document itself from Mark Cuban that you're saying are not accurate. In the quotes, he is saying, I can't sell, I have to wait to sell, and then he supposedly went and sold immediately. But if he never said that, then what is the problem?
I don't know. I mean, that's something you should ask the SEC because we'll demonstrate that he never said it.
Well, Christopher, are you saying that there's no taped conversation? Because he was also talking with the representative from this company that was arranging the private placement, was arranging the stock offering. Many times they record conversations, or there could be at least a record, a call log from his cell phone or from the phone company. None of that exists.
None of that exists, and I'll tell you that the entity that was arranging the transaction, Merriman Kernan, If there is a tape of them, everybody can play it, and it's not going to say anything like what the SEC quoted.
So what's the premise of this then? You say, I mean,
this is why we're very happy to go in front of the judge, because there's no meat to this lawsuit.
Okay, so we want to, but yeah, that's what I was going to touch on. Is there, because he has this website now that there's this, you know, the SEC is up in arms, or is this, you know, what does he mean, Mark Cuban, about the gross misconduct of power by the SEC's office?
We're going to show the judge, and you guys will all see too.
Oh, come on. Tell me right now, Christopher.
Do I need to be concerned? Because I'm doing a whole Where's My Money feature, and all I do is shine a light on these guys, much like you guys have been doing on the bailoutsleuth.com site.
I think that you might want to be concerned. I think people who criticize the SEC have a much higher chance of having enforcement action brought against them. And we're going to demonstrate that very persuasively in the right forum.
Mr. Clark, let me take this.
Which Mr. Clark? We have two, Michael and Christopher.
Christopher, please tell me. All right, so the way I understand it, Mr. Cuban sold his stock. The following day, there was a public offering for more stock, driving the price down. Now, I would guess that the question here now is whether or not Mark Cuban had knowledge of that private offering the following day, being one of the bigger shareholders or not. There's your case in a nutshell. Am I right?
No.
Well, then tell me what's the defense? If he knew there was a public offering the next day, sold his shares, how is that not insider trading?
Because you have to be an insider to insider trade. Mark didn't work for the company. Mark wasn't the CEO of the company. Mark was a shareholder.
But if he has knowledge that the public doesn't have, correct me if I'm wrong,
isn't that the law?
Just insider trading defined.
Well, let's have Michael Clark. Michael Clark, what is the law with insider trading? Do you have to be a member of the company, a board? Is it can you just be a shareholder and not involved in the company, and you learn of inside information, and that's legally insider trading?
The law has changed over the years. It started off with the idea that you had to be a quote-unquote insider and a stockholder that had knowledge of these proceedings. But over time, the Supreme Court and the courts have developed a doctrine called the misappropriation doctrine, which is essentially puts you in a situation where you get in public knowledge that the public doesn't have, private knowledge that you exploit instead of the public. And so the SEC has been pushing this theory and successfully has pushed it all the way through. And so that's what I said before. You can become a situational insider if you have a duty not to basically take advantage of information that's private to the disadvantage of the public. There was celebrated... Go ahead.
Got it.
Christopher, I guess I'd just leave it with this last question then. In the end, what do you guys actually argue? Are you arguing that they don't have a case at all, or you're arguing that in the rules of the law that you guys didn't do anything wrong?
I think, first of all, they've laid out certain factual allegations in their complaint which aren't true. And so, first of all, we'll contest whether those allegations legally are sufficient to constitute insider trading. And if the judge disagrees with us on that, we think he will agree. Then we're going to demonstrate that the allegations in the complaint, like the phone call you just averted to, didn't happen.
Well, Christopher, are you saying that Mark Cuban then did not know about the private placement before it was made public? He did not know.
He knew that there was going to be an offering of the stock, but that, just as Michael just laid out, that doesn't equate to insider trading. Lots of people, lots of places can know information.
Okay, so
hundreds of people find out on pipes.
Hold on. So he's not denying that. That's big news there. He's not denying the fact that he knew of the private placement before it was made public. Are you there, Christopher?
Mr. Cuban was contacted by Merriman Kernan about this offering. That's true.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Christopher Clark, for joining us. Michael Clark as well. Christopher Clark, of course, is the attorney for Mark Cuban, and Mark Clark there giving us some inside information, not illegally,
not illegal,
about how this law works. Because there's a lot of gray areas there, guys, because it has changed a lot, and it's in the interpretation of the courts.
And to be clear, hundreds of people know immediately anytime a pipe is planned. Attorneys, their accountants, their secretaries. Mark Cuban was not far from the only one.
But do they trade on that information?
Tough to...
All right, folks, so lawmakers, especially those who voted against TARP in the first place,